I made numerous regressions with people who, under hypnosis, remembered how they found themselves lying on a table, surrounded by small grey humanoid extraterrestrials. In other cases, they remembered how they were guided into the spaceship, how the aliens showed them their craft, its monitors, its propulsion.
A monitorokat, és lát különböző gombokat, berendezésű tárgyakat.
They look very different one from the other. And they look similar to others that are seen in other parts of the world. Let me explain. Let's say the greys, the EBs, that are so much, say, the fashion in the States. You only think of the greys in the United States. We have some of those, but sometimes with other characteristics. And we have all other kinds. I should say that we have quite a quantity of cases in which they look like humans, or like very similar to humans, or much more beautiful and taller than humans, or like what we would call not monsters but freaks of nature, something very different to what we're accustomed to. That is a very intriguing aspect of the matter.
A lonely road in the outbacks of Australia, the Great Down Under, was the scene of a unique mass abduction. In the early hours of Sunday morning, August the 8th, 1993, 3 independent groups of people traveling in separate cars were taken aboard an alien craft and only later remembered the event without knowing each other. Kelly Cahill was one of them.
Where my husband and I were driving home from a friend's house one night when we saw a 50-metre craft in a field, a paddock on the side of the road, and we stopped and got out and crossed the road, and so did a second party of individuals who pulled up about 100 metres behind us. All I could remember was seeing a craft hovering in the air, which we'd encountered a couple of kilometres beforehand, and then just seeing a blinding light and remembering nothing except knowing that something had happened, because my heart was thumping and the adrenaline was pumping through my body, and all of a sudden I'm totally disorientated and relaxed in the car, and I didn't know what had gone on. It was like I had a blackout. Driving back past the same area, I just got this horrifying feeling in my stomach, and I just remembered everything that had happened when we'd stopped the car out on the field. But I had probably about 6 weeks where I couldn't remember anything, where I had this blank space. So I've still got some missing time. It's not all there. It's only the first 10 minutes. Basically, after we got out of the car, we saw this craft, I suppose, some sort of configuration of round orange lights with a blue fluorescent haze underneath it that came down in a conical shape and hit the ground in a semicircle. And as we stood there, a tall black being seemed to just appear in front of it, followed by 7 or 8 others. I felt this energy force through my body, is the only way I can explain it, and I became hysterical, and they came rushing across the field. I was given a blow to the stomach and landed flat on my back in the grass, and basically there was bits of a conversation going on that I could hear a male voice, but I guess that I was really struggling to stay conscious at that stage, and I remember, the last thing I remember was calling for God's help, I suppose, and we were back in the car. About 7 foot tall, they were black, their eyes lit up red. They weren't like that at first, only when I started screaming, and that's when they crossed the field as well. basically I couldn't see any other facial features except these big glowing red eyes and these tall dark figures. Yeah, that was about what we saw.
If Kelly had come in on her own, we wouldn't have found it just a normal case. But what occurred was we were able to get the other couple, the other car that was involved in the encounter. And what made the encounter important to us was that there were two independent sources of that viewed the same encounter. And if you do research, you discover in these type of abduction cases, you tend to find that the groups are come in, in some way related in some sense. In other words, the encounter occurs on the road, everybody hops out and has a look at it. In this case, the two cars are separated by distance, and the two groups don't know each other, and they, in the end, disappear from the location and consequently come back to have research done on them in a separate, at a different time down the road. So, well, there was what we did. We were looking for the location to get the general location of the encounter, which we discovered reasonably easily. But the main data that we got was from the field analysis was some chemical changes to the soil, 3 markings on the ground. They were approximately 75 centimetres in diameter. Also, we used a special magnetometer on the field itself, and we discovered an unusual anomaly on the field that looked like a half moon or facing towards the north. There was other things that came from the encounter was that each of the girls, especially because the men seemed to be isolated from both of the cars, but the girls indicated to us that they'd been interfered in some way, and that one of the girls called Glenda, who's a trained nurse, a registered nurse, she had markings on her which she went to a GP, and the GP photographed them, and consequently we had some very good evidence of a triangle under her navel, and a mark on the left inner thigh, and a mark on the base of her, down towards her ankle. So there was a lot of good evidence available.
There is no exemption for these extraordinary encounters, not even Israel, the Holy Land. Here, some extraordinary cases were reported since 1996. The first one from Nazareth, the little town in Galilee, where 2,000 years ago Jesus was raised, which is today one of the most important sanctuaries of Christianity.
In the evening of September 15, I walked to the post office when some 400 meters from my home, I saw a huge round craft hovering only a few feet above me. It had 5 lights, each containing 3 smaller ones, red and brown and white. When I stood there and looked at the craft, I suddenly was lifted into it. I found myself surrounded by small creatures with stubby arms and tentacles coming out of them. One of them was a woman wearing a shiny green garment and a moon-shaped kind of helmet or hat. Then a larger creature appeared and the small ones gathered around it. It issued an order in a voice that sounded like a needle scratching across a record. And one of the smaller beings came closer to me and suddenly threw some kind of yellow powder at my upper body and face. That's all what I remember. I found myself on a sport ground of a school just a few hundred meters from where I was taken. I was totally confused, but I decided to go to the police station and report what happened to me. I arrived at the police station a few minutes later, but when I looked at the clock, it was almost 11 p.m. When I went to the post office, it was just before the close, about 7:55 p.m.
משהו בצוואר, פה, בצדדים האלו, הרגשתי כאבים. אחר כך עוד פעם הזמינה מישהו אחר, הוא ניגש עליי, כאילו שירק על הפנים שלי כזה. אחרי גב שלי הרגשתי מישהו דחף אותי, אני נפלתי, זה היה בסטדיון, לא יודע כמה זמן אני הייתי שם גם כן. מתי הגעתי בתחנה משטרה?